What's up, Space Pirates? This is your captain, the seriously silly Dr. Disaster, and one of the most satisfying moments in any game that you're competing in is when your opponent finally realizes that they're beaten, they give up, and they are no longer trying to win.
Screw you! I quit!
Go ahead! We don't need ya!
Well, that seems to be where we're at with Bioware and Dragon Age the Veilguard, because it looks as though Bioware themselves no longer has any confidence in Dragon Age the Veilguard, because one of the game's directors just announced in an interview with the Rolling Stone that they are not putting out a single bit of DLC content for the game. Basically, now that launch is out of the way, they are giving up on the project and letting it fade into obscurity where it belongs.
Go back to the shadow!
Instead, it sounds like the studio is putting all of their eggs into the one basket. Everyone is being reassigned to Mass Effect 5, which the speculation is that the game is going to be formally announced with a loose launch date and everything, all of that announced on this year's N7 Day, which is November 7th. So, gamers are going to be formally told that the same people who completely flubbed the 4th Dragon Age are all going to go to work on the 5th Mass Effect game.
I'm so happy for you.
But really, the takeaway here is that Bioware apparently has no confidence in the Veilguard. They don't think it has any staying power because they aren't even going to try to make any more money on the project with DLC.
He must have given up. Thrown in the towel. Abandoned his sad little masquerade.
Alright, me hearties, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and also, don't forget to follow me over on Twitter or X, or whatever you want to refer to it as these days. I keep a list on there of games lousy with wokeness pinned to the account at all times for your reference. My handle over there is Dr. Disaster 1. But alright then, let's dive on into this Bioware stuff. Dragon Age pre-order numbers were not good, as many of us reported on for a while, and now that the game is actually released and we have access to some of the hard sales data for this game, we can see that it is definitely not a breakout game. You may remember the other day that the CEO of EA was saying that Dragon Age had breakout potential. But whatever potential they thought it had clearly never manifested itself. The game could not even hit 100,000 concurrent players despite the pedigree of the IP that the game is based on. And as we discussed this morning, the retention rate for the game is not very good either. As Grums noted in this tweet here from yesterday, only 13.9% of players made it halfway through the game, and only 0.2% of players actually beat the game. There is simply no reason, with these kinds of numbers, and with the Metacritic score being as low as it is, a 3.8 out of 10 for regular people, there's just no reason to think the sales for this thing will increase, and therefore, basically, Bioware has decided that they've spent enough resources on this game, because they are reportedly not going to be putting out any DLC. Keep in mind that there were 8 expansions that were released for Inquisition a decade ago. And this is EA we're talking about here, a company that loves to milk every last little thing that they can out of a title. But let's read about their decision here in this article from Games Radar. The article reads, Dragon Age the Veilguard is set to be the first game in the series without any post-launch DLC plans as developer Bioware pivots toward the upcoming Mass Effect 5. Speaking to Rolling Stone, Dragon Age the Veilguard creative director John Epler reportedly reiterated that the new fantasy RPG wouldn't follow in its predecessor's footsteps, as the studio has no current plans for future editions. Dragon Age has had various fan-favorite expansions over the years, but the sudden change is supposedly the result of Bioware's full attention entirely shifting to the next Mass Effect game currently in development. Now, to me, this sounds like EA is throwing in the towel on Dragon Age. What do you want to bet that if the numbers looked better, that EA would make a different decision here? If the game had, say, the same numbers as Baldur's Gate 3, if the better part of 1 million players jumped in and played the Veilguard, I pretty much guarantee that they would not be jumping ship and pushing everything in on Mass Effect 5. What this sounds like to me is a confirmation of everything we have been saying with Dragon Age. They knew that the Veilguard was a turd, and their entire marketing campaign was intended to obscure that fact for as long as possible and to trick as many people as they could into buying the game. And now that they've made back whatever they could, they are pushing into another franchise in the hopes that they can recoup their losses from this boondoggle that was the Veilguard as soon as possible. But the article continues, Bioware will probably continue to give Dragon Age the Veilguard a few patches or quality of life updates, though a heftier expansion on par with its previous efforts seems to be in the rearview mirror. It might come as somewhat of a surprise to longtime fans, however, since Dragon Age Origins Awakening expansion and Inquisition's Trespasser epilogue are so beloved, and that history with great DLC even extended to Mass Effect 2 with Lair of the Shadow Broker and the Citadel being highlights. Yes, this is a studio. Bioware is a studio that was actually kinda renowned for its badass DLC back in the early 2010s. In fact, I'd credit Bioware with being one of the major pioneers who really pushed the DLC phenomenon into the mainstream so that it became a standard practice in games, for better or worse. In their defense, though, the game director for Dragon Age the Veilguard, Corinne Bush, was saying that there wouldn't be DLC about a month ago. The article concludes by saying, focusing on Mass Effect 5 isn't the only reason for a lack of Veilguard expansions, however. Game director Corinne Bush previously explained that Dragon Age the Veilguard wouldn't get DLC because the game was designed as a full experience, and although she also loves expansions like Trespasser, she admitted that something so important probably should have been a part of the main game itself. Yeah, I just don't buy that shit though. I think that at the end of September, which is when they were saying this, but at the end of September, they were already looking at their internal numbers and seeing that this game was not going to take off like they hoped. My guess is that they said this in order to cover their own ass, but you know damn well that if this game were selling well, and if it were retaining players, then they would absolutely be putting out DLC. That's just easy money. But I'm going to leave it there. What are your thoughts on the situation? Drop them into the comment section below, and we will talk there.
Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your captain is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.